all the rage and everyone's talking about it. And so we've got three amazing companies. We're going to start with the best one this morning, Trust Science. I have the privilege of interviewing Colin and his CEO, Evan Chrapko. Before we start that, just want to give a shout out to the team here at Intergen, Sandy, our CEO, Tony in marketing, Kyle is our venture lead, and Emily as our event host and manager. So welcome everybody. My name is Khaled. I'm the program director here at Intergen. Before we start, I'd like to also introduce Eileen from Virtue Capital. Virtue is a B2B software investor based in Toronto, typically investing in later stage B2B software companies. And Eileen's graciously agreed to do the intros for our two guest speakers this morning. So Eileen, kick it away, please.
Yeah, and appreciate the invite. Very glad to be here. I personally spent a lot of my time in BC and Alberta, so look forward to meeting some of you folks in person next time. I'm happy to introduce Evan and Colin from Trust Science. So to start with Evan Chrapko started Trust Science with his brother Shane. Evan is a serial entrepreneur and investor, having served as CEO or advisor for numerous innovative startups, including Flow Networks, acquired by DoubleClick for $80 million, and PlateSpin, acquired by Novell for $205 million. Prior to starting Trust Science, Evan and Shane founded and within 30 months sold cloud storage pioneer DocSpace for $568 million. Evan is a CPA, CA, and holds a law degree from Columbia University. He is a Henry Crown Fellow and member of YPO and has been named to the Real Leaders Global 100 alongside Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Peter Diamandis, and others. Now I'm happy to introduce Colin as well. As Trust Science's VP Corporate Affairs, Colin Tran holds a wide range of responsibilities from marketing and business development to financing and strategy. Colin has rapidly become a proven industry leader and is the youngest individual to become an honoree in the 9-year history of auto remarketing's under 40, and is the youngest individual to receive an Alberta Science and Technology Award, one of the province's most prestigious awards in science, technology, and innovation in its 33-year history. Colin has additionally been the focus of several local and national publications for his work in the Edmonton entrepreneurial ecosystem. And in addition to his role with Trust Science, Colin currently serves on the organizing committee of the National Automotive Finance Association's Ask to Answer forums. So welcome to Colin and Evan today.
Thank you, Eileen. And also like to welcome our board members on the call this morning, our board chair, Brian Fileski, and our newly joined minted board member, also Mary Morin. So welcome to the call and thanks for participating. Evan, we'll start off with you. I always like to ask founders and CEOs, why the hell did you start this company? You know, why this company and not something else? Obviously, you've done lots of companies. You know, financial inclusion is not something we talk about a lot in Alberta, and marrying technology and financial inclusion is what Trust Science is doing. So tell us a little bit about the heritage and the pedigree behind your company, Evan.
Sure, thanks, Kelly, and thank you to everyone who's investing some time here with us this morning. The question could be, why the hell entrepreneurship or serial startups and exits, but that's a whole nother show. Why the hell Trust Science? The sad reality is that in business and in life, not everyone is necessarily who they seem, or maybe they change over time. And I got burned by different partners, 3 different incidents. After the third one, that was straw that broke the camel's back. It was pretty serious malfeasance, let's just say, involved. And I got really frustrated with myself. I felt embarrassed that I didn't see it coming, and stupid that I didn't, pick it up in advance, which would have saved a lot of heartache and hassles. But as a serial repeat technology commercialization guy, I said to myself, there's got to be a technology way to get my gut out of the equation. And I set about what was started as a passion project and became now a rather sophisticated platform with global aspirations. And the point of it was to predict what a human being is going to do under different circumstances. And so that's pretty big, pretty ambitious, admittedly. And when it got started over a decade ago, I knew then, and I knew that what was coming would make it possible to, and necessary, to devote the whole enterprise to artificial intelligence, or being able to harness big data and alternative data, and then properly, in a useful way, come up with conclusions. And that required, in that kind of data environment, that required AI. So it was way too early, way ahead of its time in 2006, 2007. So it actually, I pulled it down for a while. I went into a stealth mode after having initially launched. We were one of the first apps on the Apple App Store way back in the day, but pulled it down because there were no purchase orders. So as an entrepreneur, in terms of getting things done or creating new categories and disrupting old categories, if there's no purchase orders, that's not a business. But there was something there, and so we went into stealth mode, quietly, aggressively inventing, breaking through a lot of big, huge problems. We were on some of the advanced tech platform stuff even before Google. They're there now, obviously, but my team was really inventive and creative, which led to also aggressively applying for a lot of patents. So while we've emerged as a startup for all intents and purposes now to the outside world, it's a story that's been long in the making, and we've emerged now onto the landscape, onto the commercial landscape, with a pretty formidable patent estate. We have over 55 patents now in over 13 countries, many more patents still pending around the world. But this, as I mentioned a moment ago, this does have a global applicability, and it's much more broad in its ultimate vision than what you would see if you go to our website. So I'll just conclude by saying the absolute, law of gravity, let's say, in doing this kind of work is build something global, build it scalable. Do not make it a one-trick pony. So make it a platform that can do lots of different things, but importantly, go to market in a hyper narrowly laser focused way. And so if anyone's looked at the website or goes to look at it after this, you'll see a deliberate focus on something that's not about homeland security, and it's not about online dating, and it's not about executive recruiting or headhunting. It's about underwriting. It's not about insurance underwriting. It's about credit underwriting. And even more narrowly laser focused, it's not about all credit, all kinds of different credit products, business, and so on. It's consumer credit in the lower 2/3 of the consumer base. So not prime and super prime to begin with. None of those things I've said is off the table. We'll get to them in the fullness of time with more resources or post IPO or what have you. But we're very deliberately sticking our landing in one key area, predicting what a human is going to do if you give them money for either a car or what's called an installment loan, somewhere around $10,000 plus or minus 5.
Very good, Evan. Kind of switching gears a little bit. You guys are one of the fastest growing companies in North America. Give us a flavor for what it takes to get onto that list in terms of your year-over-year growth for revenue, but also, fintech is sort of very under the radar in Alberta. We don't have the what do you call it, the airtime that New York and Montreal and Toronto get for fintech, and you guys are building one of the fastest growing fintechs in North America. So give us a flavor for what that all takes.
Yeah, the Financial Times in London and their statistics partner Statista said number 4 fastest growing fintech in all of the Western Hemisphere. So they looked at over 7,000 companies in 20 different countries. And so I'll take that. That was earlier this year. Knowing their criteria now, I can predict we'll be on that list again next year. Maybe not as high, because it's hard to stay at the same position on a list that's about growing. The denominator starts to work against you. But in Alberta, or why Alberta, lots of reasons, starting with things like, or entities and partners like Alberta Innovates, and in general, the environment is very amenable to innovation, or it's a pioneering maybe mindset. I was once asked a long time ago, after that very large exit, what does a farm kid from Alberta have, what business do you have doing selling a company for $568 million US in the internet? And I said, well, there's a lot of advantages you get when you grow up in an area that's considered pretty remote by most people's standards or experience. When I was going to law school in New York City, I said I went to the U of A, and people said, well, where is that? Alabama, Arizona, Austin, Alaska? I said, no, it's Alberta. But the other thing is being self-reliant. So growing up on a farm far away from lots of services, you had to make your own repairs or do your own thing if it was a holiday or weekend, and the crop had to come in. So there are those background things, but then so things like financial support from Alberta Innovates or the Canadian federal government that you don't see in the US. I'm talking obviously about the things of right, like SHRED and so on, or the availability of IRAP. But the other thing is Edmonton in particular, we had the super advantageous existence or reality of the Faculty of Computer Science at the U of A. And so some of the grandfathers in the AI space, now I'm specifically talking about AI, were there and are considered the original thinkers on a science that's now very much in the news, but for 40 plus years was not very much in the news. And not even those 15 years ago or so, when I got this started as the passion project that I mentioned. If it weren't for that talent pool in which I am participating or fishing very deeply and I might say successfully, there would be no Trust Science, given the commitment that I had made to AI and us being at the absolutely cutting edge of that science, and then having to put together a legitimate or bona fide platform, ML ops platform. I think those are some of the reasons. It's I often say in doing technology or any kind of, I suppose, commercialization or entrepreneurship, you have to be equal or more parts lucky as you are maybe smart. I've definitely lucked out with respect to those ingredients that I've just talked about.
Thank you, Evan. That's super cool. Just want to go sort of deep dive into the product, and you have something called Invisible Prime. And we're all curious to know, what is Invisible Prime, and how does your AI ML platform and credit bureau assess risk, lending risk differently than traditional financial institutional models?
Sure. We the broad label for this service is Credit Bureau 2.0, to distinguish it from the future services we'll offer in those other industries that I mentioned. But in credit, what we're looking at is 5 different classes of data. We had to anticipate operating in developing countries of the third world. So lots of different vectors for what and how we gather information about a person. Then bringing it into, under the magnifying glass, or to benefit from the learning or training that happens on data with machine learning, is all in service of scoring people or assessing people and reaching decisions, including terms, not just a score about your likelihood of repaying your loan, but a decision about whether or not the amount of money you're asking for is acceptable, or a decision about what interest rate is applicable or appropriate in this case, or whether or not there needs to be a co-borrower, how much of a down payment. There's a lot that goes into being able to render a loan or render a decision way above and beyond the score. So maybe I should consider renaming it from Credit Bureau 2.0 to something much more expansive. But what we're doing on the invisible prime front, and why this is so motivating to our investors and ourselves as trust scientists, is that you have, for scores below 700 or 680, that's often considered the point at the break point at which above is prime or super prime quality borrowers, and below that is subprime. And that scoring ladder, or that scoring regime, is generally just taken as a given, as FICO or Beacon in Canada or Vantage in the US. And that's that is the crux of the issue, written into some constating legislation for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You actually had, what rarely ever happens, is a commercial entity named as needing to be involved in getting the benefits of that those US federal monies. And that was FICO, or Fair Isaac Corp, as it was known, got invented in the 1950s. And so it has this monopoly. And now all the fish are swimming in this ocean of FICO scores. And you stop actually thinking about that. Like a fish doesn't know it lives in water. The reality is that for FICO, Vantage, or Beacon scores below 700, 40% of those are actually prime or super prime people if you gave them the money. So they're invisible in terms of the conventional multi-$100 billion system that exists to do this kind of work. That these good borrowers, high quality people, are not getting a break, or the score or the decisioning going around the FICO score is your on-ramp into the modern economy. If you have an artificially low score or an improperly low score, if you're in that 40% who would actually behave like prime or super prime borrowers, too bad, so sad. That's where we come in, and why we're on the list of the Real Leaders magazine did the 200 most impactful companies on the face of the earth. This was last year. We were proud to be on that list alongside of Microsoft and Tesla and another Western Canadian based company, TELUS, that we all know. So that was a nice acknowledgement that trust science is making a difference to these invisible prime. They're prime, they're just invisible to my multi-$100 billion competitors.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. And there's 90 million of them in North America. Is that correct, Evan, approximately?
Yeah, that depends on how you define the numbers. Some you can say 60 million plus or minus 30, depending on, some people set prime or that boundary at 650, some set it at 680, some at 700. So there's a range in there. But the ones that we're talking about are young people, or self-employed people, or new to the country people, and so on. There's a long list of why you might be invisible to the multi-$100 billion industry that's growing up around this issue.
Yeah, so the social impact of what you're doing with new to country and new to credit and marginalized groups, underbanked consumers, I would suspect that's very significant. Do you have a story in maybe one of your underwriting situations where you made a big difference in someone's life, where they were now able to access credit and sort of create a transformational pivot in what they could now do because they have some money?
Yeah, we had a person come in, one of the beneficiaries of these kinds of loans, and I had her talk to all of my team in Edmonton, and it was just such a defining moment for the company, or in our history. There wasn't dry eye in the house when she was finished talking. And you have a story of someone single mom and having not being, a good job, but not being treated on the basis of her history, and that others or another person was taking care of the family finances prior to a breakdown in the relationship. And so absent being able to get considered properly for who she was as a person, character, as well as now the brand new job that was not on the credit reports, right? Being assessed for the potential and so on. Being able to us being able, with the borrower's permission, look in on a year's worth of their banking data and so on, and reach conclusions that in an instant reach conclusions as trust science that you just cannot do in the conventional system, or involving human beings as loan officers and so on. The alternatives for how to buy groceries or bridge from being unemployed to having this new job and so on were just horrifying things that none of hopefully anyone on this call has ever had to think about doing or availing themselves of. And so it was an impactful and emotional moment. I would also often have, and still have at my desk in Edmonton, the story in the USA Today. I was in a hotel in an American city at one point along the way here, and the front page story was of a woman, a different situation, trying to keep, in the sandwich generation, young kids, as well as taking care of older parents and trying to go to school and so on, and pointing out how the fact of a very low credit score, just because she was essentially off the grid, there's a credit catch-22. If you don't have credit, you can't build up a credit score. And so that chicken and egg problem is something else that we're able to get around or solve. So there are a number. That is not a particular to trust science story, but it's indicative of the kinds of people that we're helping through our lenders. So my customers are the lenders, the banks. My customers, just like FICO's customers are the banks or lenders, the same for me. But we do have this ability to be involved with the consumer directly. It's optional, but it's there. If you recall me talking about being relevant in the third world or developing countries, that will be a primary source of data in those other regions. But so having all of that put together leads to some pretty touching or pretty heartwarming outcomes that we're proud to be associated with.
That is super awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Evan. Colin, over to you. Talking about customers, who are your target customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So Evan gave a pretty good high-level overview on those customers, really being those that are focused on non-prime consumers, everywhere from automotive lending to installment lending. We've also branched out into some forms of retail finance as well, or point-of-sale financing. But really, our focus has been on those consumer lenders, ranging in size all the way from your super major banks, all the way down to some smaller, single province, single states, regional finance companies. And really, our focus for all of these companies can take a little bit of a different approach, down to call it three major areas. One is really improving, call it end-to-end, lead-to-loan consumer experiences, really optimizing every single decision along the way. Another, and this one's really applicable for, call it those banks or those lenders that are currently sitting a little bit more prime and competing in really a red ocean environment with each other, in their efforts to go ahead and gain more market share, expand that credit box in towards, call it more conventionally subprime consumers without increasing a lot of risk. And then in that third box, we're talking about those smaller lenders where we're giving them a really powerful enterprise grade platform that allows them to compete with their bigger competitors, and really take that platform and scale their operations to become ideally one of those bigger competitors within their space as well.
Right on. That's great. So you're having impact with not just your customer's customer, but also obviously your direct customer, and helping them grow their business and and be more effective in how they underwrite. That's awesome. I read something on your website that was very interesting. You know, you guys, because of your platform, your loan size is higher, your market capture is significantly more. There's a number of very, very profound metrics that you guys create for your immediate customer. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the USP of your business or your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So the at the baseline of our platform and the capabilities that we're offering is a risk score. And really where we shine is how we operationalize that. But going back to the score, we're talking about a score that's vastly more predictive than our competitors. We've seen 40 to 60% statistical lift on the various measures. And when you're able to be that predictive, especially in that subprime space, you now start to be able to distinguish who your good borrowers are going to be and who your bad borrowers are most likely to be. And in doing so, we're able to really focus in on precisely which borrowers each lender can ought to lend to. And further to that, with the power of the platform that we have behind it, we're able to optimize items like the deal terms, payment amounts, interest rates, similar to that. And as a result, what we're able to do is give lenders the confidence to lend to these individuals without feeling like they're going to take on a lot of risk. And therefore, they're going to be able to offer terms that are a little bit more optimal, perhaps terms that are going to be beating their competitors. We're going to be able to give them the confidence to lend that, that higher dollar amount, which ultimately is to the consumer's benefit, but also obviously there's bottom line benefits to the business as well. And we're going to give them the ability to streamline things, reduce some operational costs in order to ultimately take that savings and say, obviously A, go to the bottom line, and B, to some extent, those savings can be passed along to those end consumers as well.
Awesome, that's great. We got a question here from Mark Hutchinson in the chat, and he says, Evan, what was your strategy for breaking into the American market?
So as a Canadian, and I recognize a couple of my investors on the call as well, and but there may be Americans on the line, but so I could say this safely, that we in technology commercialization, if you're especially creating something new, what we did is what I always do is first do it locally, do it here at home in Canada. We're transparent about when we're at the very beginnings of a release or still in alpha, very transparent with the customers that there will be issues. We're learning. Can you teach us? We'll show you what we have going on with this AI thing. And in that way, experiment our way through. I hesitate using the word guinea pigs because it's not that bad, but experiment our way through to say beta or version 1.0 here at home. Then when you go to the US, where they're less forgiving, let's say, or more litigious, you're ready for prime time. And in general, both here and in the US, it's a call high strategy, because we're offering something that the market hasn't seen. You want to make sure that there's support from the board of directors. So we'll find a director level or chairperson contact and work down from there. Because if it's not going to be supported there, then you may as well not bother. You'd be saving yourself a lot of time. And in that same regard, I wish I was more aware or smarter and had moved faster on the following. We'd spent a lot of time asking to talk to the risk officer, the chief risk or chief lending and adjudication department, who assesses the applications. What we backed our way into in the US was that, and this was with a customer saying, hey, I spend a lot more money actually on my marketing efforts, trying to find leads, trying to find potential borrowers and have them apply to us. Gosh, wouldn't it be useful to have this risk awareness that you've got happening deep in the dungeons of the adjudication function, up at the top end of the funnel or at the beginning of the life cycle of a potential borrower, even, and then we took it the next step, even so far as to find these potential borrowers or consumers in need and who were credit worthy, and bring them to the bank. So we are much more focused both in the US and Canada, but certainly in the US on the marketing function. The chief marketing officer is who I ask the board of directors member to introduce us to as a first instance. And on the other side in the US, what we've begun doing is going to the chief financial officer for an asset light lender who's just primarily doing originations and then, packaging up 100,000 loans or whatever number into a security. Then, the hedge funds or the big banks, the cities and the JP Chases of the world come in and buy that book. Trust Science, it's just inherent to what we're capable of doing, going through in a batch mode instantly, evaluating the makeup of those ABSs, those asset-backed securities, say in the car loan situation, right down to also considering the vehicle, by the way, which matters, by the way. The AI has learned a lot of things in the last 5 and 6 years. It's become really, really, really intelligent. We can inform the negotiations that the CFOs do for transacting a book of loans that has already been originated. So that's the US, the way we're doing it stateside.
Very good, very good. Talking about, building a business, it's all, it's not all about money, but that's a big part. How do you guys get paid?
So the lenders or the originators or banks are our customers. And if it's the chief marketing officer, one besides the law of gravity that you want to build global and not put yourself in a corner by being a one-trick pony. The other is that you don't want to get cute and try to teach the market a new way of buying your stuff. So no new business models allowed. We sell to marketing the way they're used to buying. We sell to risk the way the chief risk officer is used to paying for scores or decisions. And for the chief financial officer, it's more as a percentage of the loan. So in that last example, Fitch or Moody's or the like, S&P have a certain way that they do their business models. We just mimic each of those areas. So they know how to buy it, they know where to put you in the budget, and they know what they should be paying more or less, or how much to expect to have to pay if you deliver the goods. So it's an it depends answer.
Interesting. And this is subscription?
It depends.
It depends. Okay. So interesting. So price discovery must have been in the early days a very, very gnarly thing to do, because you've got multiple buyers that embed your platform and use it in slightly different ways.
Yes. In the very early days, when people were still figuring out whether or not this was even possible because it seemed fantastic or magical, what we had to do is just say, you pay us what you think it's worth. Take it, use it. And this was for those early alpha version or guinea pig customers. With full transparency, I sent them a basket. Each CEO at the beginning got a basket of Eno or Tums and adult diapers and Grecian formula, because I said your hair is going to go gray on this one, but it'll be worth it in the end. I've had those baskets returned and they didn't have to use any of that stuff because they enjoyed the experience. And for the first time in my whole career, I've enjoyed the following. For those around the table here who are old enough to remember the Victor Kiam commercials, I like the shaver so much I bought the company. I've had my customers now coming back and asking to becoming equity holders in Trust Science. They were so impressed and astounded by the results and predicting what's going to happen as we go forward through their industry, that they wanted to play on the upside.
Awesome. That's fantastic. What else do I got here? Okay, let's go to mentorship. So Intergen's all about, intergenerational matching of people that are semi-retired, in transition, very experienced with up and coming, high growth companies, entrepreneurs across the province. And obviously I'm thinking there has to be somebody or people in your circle of influence, Colin and Evan, that have made a difference for you guys personally and professionally as you pursue this endeavor called Trust Science. tell us a little bit about the impact of those people in your lives.
Sure. I'll let Colin finish, but I'll start by highlighting Colin. You're looking at talking with someone here who is in his teens when he started with us, distinguished himself immensely to the point that he could give the talk that I'm giving now in a very, very short space of time. And my point here is that to your echoing what Intergen is all about, you have to look at the younger folks too. So Colin has taught me things, and especially when you're in a high tech or disruptive industry and on the cutting edge or bleeding edge of some of that, for the internet natives, things come to them differently or more intuitively, say, than they would come to the older generations. But that being said, I have a number of my mentors are in my cap table now. I treat all of the whole list as advisors, some of whom are publicly outward facing, more of whom will be announced in the fullness of time. And you'll recognize some of their names in the future, those in the future, but on the cap table, mentorship from the likes of the guy who led Facebook's IPO as their CFO at the time. He went on to start his own technology startup and is a multiple unicorn as the founder and CEO, David. Fantastic insights around when and how to approach an exit and maybe even that specific vector as an exit. You have the former CEO of Manulife, the Don Galloin, who based in Canada. I often have to tell an American audience Manulife is the owner of John Hancock, because they don't know anything other than John Hancock as the 800-pound gorilla. But I point out it's a Canadian company that owns that one. Anyway, the adjacent vertical to credit is insurance underwriting. So we're right now working credit underwriting, insurance underwriting, and Don's insights or advice in when and how to approach his former industry are we take as gospel. And it's just a ton of, whether it's being a member of the Aspen Institute, and so as a Henry Crown Fellow and a phenomenal global leadership group in those now 400 or 500 people. There's only 20 of us that get admitted approximately every year. They're some of the captains of different industries, and you'll recognize their names. You have in a mentorship sense, investors like the fellow in Seattle that some people there refer to as the unicorn whisperer. You pay really close attention to those who've done it before or who have demonstrated they have a really accurate nose for what it is you're trying to do.
Awesome.
I guess that makes it my turn. And so Evan, thank you. I guess cat's out of the bag now in terms of where my age is likely approximately. For those of you that don't know me personally, you can probably make a pretty good inference as to where I'm at. I think mentorship is absolutely a critical piece of anybody's career. And certainly for myself as a younger individual breaking into this industry and others like me, having the benefits of not just call it your traditional mentors, although I'm incredibly grateful for those parents, coaches, professors, teachers and whatnot that are in this space. But I think it can't be overstated the benefits of immersing yourself in a company like Trust Science, or in your industry of choice, for those that are younger and listening to this, and really finding an individual or a supervisor, a boss, a leader, who does have the ability to take you under their wing and show you the ropes. It invests their time in developing you into a better professional and a better person overall. And so I'm incredibly grateful to Evan and the entire team at Trust Science. We have a lot of very senior leadership who has cut their teeth in this industry for longer than I've been alive. And I think the benefits of their seniority and their experience certainly speaks to the overall impact on the company as a whole, but B, the ability for me to learn from individuals who really have led their respective organizations in the past and have been ultimately where my career will fundamentally take me, but both now and into the future. Certainly, as Evan mentioned, trust science on that IPO track. Eventually, you will see me here again, likely with another spot, with trust science or another organization. And I think the lessons that are learned through trust science and through the excellent team that's been built here will carry for a lifetime. And I look forward to more of those, and to meeting more of the folks in the call as well, and really learning from everybody in this space.
Great. I
I
like the
have to-
idea of having a beginner's mindset. Did somebody say something?
Absolutely.
Keller, just have to add to Colin and to Evan, it was like a paid advertisement for mentorship. We so appreciate your testimonies and tribute to the value of a mentor and a mentee, an advisor and an entrepreneur. That's music to our ears. It's something we know, but to have it testified by you fine people is really appreciated.
Oh, thanks, Brian. Rod Hurt's one of our Intergen business advisors. Rod, you got a question. You want to read it out loud and have Evan or Colin answer it? Rod? Okay, I'll read the question out. So Rod is asking, what is the single most significant innovation that Trust Science has discovered?
I'll answer that. The what I didn't see coming was how quickly if something is truly given, if it's been built properly or truly in a machine learning mode or that sense, and you're staying true to the AI principles, it becomes much more accurate or powerful than you might have assumed or thought going into it, even knowing as much as you may know in the underlying science and so on. And I'll give you the example that's coming to mind with this question. I had there's some professional, call it, investors on the cap table who, when the lockdown happened in March and April 2020, were like really seriously counseling that I shut everything down or sell the patent portfolio and do an elegant wind up and so on, because this global uncertainty was going to kill everything anyway. But I had, we had just finished spending a lot of time and money, double digits of millions, to spin up a bona fide ML platform. And in fact, the chaos was going to be a benefit. And it's because if things are in a steady state, there's not much to be learned. You lock a child or in a dark room, a baby in a dark room, and it's no stimuli, no learning. You open the door and it plays with the fluffy puppy or touches a hot stove. There's learning that happens in the gyrations and the chaos. And boy, did this thing ever learn quickly. That if you call that an innovation or not, it's a realization. But combined with other parts of the innovative things that we did and applied for patents on, you have the reality that if you involve the consumer in their own assessment, it's not like everyone's going to try and defraud the system or game the system. And the way we've done it prevents that from happening. So that was a big aha and an unlock for us, involving the consumer in a real way. I mean, we were necessarily doing it given the data environments in the third world and anticipating how we would get data in the first place. That was a big aha. Another one is that this generative AI emergence. It's just a fancy way of talking in terms of NLP, or some of the rudimentary chatbots that were out earlier on. This is another order of magnitude and more capability. And so being able to put together a virtual loans officer and some capability that can actually interact with those consumers on behalf of our lenders as customers, that's been transformative. That's really exciting, especially in that marketing use case when you're finding people that are still consumers and not have not yet presented themselves to your institution. That's been super exciting. The last thing is, I'm a very R&D friendly CEO, sometimes maybe too much, but there's a lot of learning in the failures or in pushing the envelope. And we, as a consequence, Trust Science is really, really advanced in the distributed ledger technology. We have some patents on the smart contract side of things that very early on. We were diving all over that. And so what that's also led to is a real capability in identity. And you need to have things like that in order to stay legally compliant. So if you're doing work in a regulated industry, please don't do it, in that break things mode. You will go to jail in the US, the CFPB jail. You don't want that. And your big credible financial institutions won't touch you with a 10-foot pole if you can't pass compliance audits and security audits and so on, scalability audits right up front. So the innovation, if it's an innovation, I don't think it is, but you see a lot of, fresh scrub, freshly minted team of 3 or 4 MBAs who are going to go out there and change the world and so on. But you've got to respect the fact that there are laws in some of the industries that you might hope to be operating. Make sure you get it right. And that's not an innovation, that's old-fashioned news, but we've definitely done that and benefited from it. So much so that TD Bank has now put Imran Khan, their global chief innovation officer, on my board of advisors. They did more due diligence to have that happen than I went through for that $568 million acquisition.
Very cool. I was actually going to have him run on the call today, but he wasn't able to join. Evan, plans for expansion. You guys are growing very fast, obviously. What will it take, and how can this community that's online right now support you in your growth?
Well, the investors on this call know that I'm always raising. I do it unconventionally. It's on a rolling basis just for next month's or the next 6 weeks of working capital. That's because my exits tend to come suddenly out of the blue. And doing it this way minimizes everyone's dilution. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's admittedly a riskier way of doing it. But for 30 years, that's how I've been. That's how I've delivered outsized returns to my investors. So that's one way. That the main ingredient there is the fuel or the money that keeps us able to execute at world-class levels of capability. We're going into a period now that the technology risk is behind us. And by the way, it's become even more smart thanks to the interest rates and inflation gyrations. So after the pandemic stuff kind of settled down, then another shock to the system. We've just benefited so much from the timing of world events and economic realities as a learning system. It's become very, very smart. And so now my absolute 100% focus is on raising the money, high net worth individuals, typically your family offices. It's 6 figures or 7 in a few cases. And I'm now getting approached unsolicited by the PEs or the growth equity shops. There's an announcement coming out on Friday that I would encourage everyone to watch our website for, talking to the essence of what you just asked about there, Khalid. Another milestone that we'll be reaching. But be careful what you wish for, right? Extreme growth is extremely expensive. And so I don't have any problem recruiting. We are a really, really attractive place to work for world-class or high-end people. they recognize each other, find one another. Let's put it that way. I'm in Toronto with a laptop that I'll be delivering to one of our senior, soon to be senior executives. I'm going to be meeting him and his family at their home. So the recruiting part, I'm not as worried about unusually. I think I know that others have expressed difficulty with that, but my 100% focus is people coming in on the simplest cap table on the planet. A kid in grade 5 is going to be able to figure out proceeds on exit because it's just one-page subscription agreement, and everyone's in shoulder to shoulder common stock.
Excellent, love it. Very good. Any questions from the community? Everyone that's on the call.
Cal, I'd ask one question, sorry to be online, but in order to determine the credibility of a subprime candidate, what's the scrubbing process? How do you get that information to develop your assessment as to their eligibility?
So there were the 5 categories of data that I mentioned. There wouldn't be in the time left, we can take this offline, not enough time to go through all those details, but it's a big data. You have thousands of companies in big data or data, you have other thousands or more now in AI and Gen AI. Having put a platform together that can actually, in a production setting, invoke those pieces in a conversational manner, in a bi-directional way. That's the way it happens, and what it's looking for. The reason that the FICOs and others or conventional ways of doing this get it wrong is that they'll look at conventional indicators like, say, a bankruptcy in isolation, and that's just a red line or a nuclear bomb, and you don't get a very good credit score. But when you're looking at hundreds or thousands of indicators, and when your methods can look at the interactions between those variables, in cases, not for everyone, but there are cases where that bankruptcy does not trump the presence of 3 or 4 other variables, or what you find at variable number 3000 might make something down in the conventional 25 or 50 variables irrelevant, or could make what's at variable number 3 extremely important. But if you're only ever looking at 25, 50, or 75 variables, that's the problem. It's not so much that those variables are wrong. Anything you can find is the answer to how a system like this becomes can be so highly predictive.
Thank you. Good stuff. Thanks.
We got time for one more question. Anybody want to pipe up? Any financial institution folks on here that have a point of view on subprime lending?
Not subprime, it's prime people, but you just can't see them properly. That's why some of the household names are now coming to us, because it's trench warfare for them to get market share in prime and super prime. It's very tightly, everybody's got their patch, but as they seek to go into newer virgin territory, let's say, what scares them off is the beacon score in Canada, or Vantage or FICO in both countries. And we're here to say that deserving people need to get what they deserve, the money they deserve, and you've got to be able to score everybody accurately. We're not incapable of working in prime and super prime, it's just less necessary. So that's why the website and our go-to-market is focused the way it is. And I'll put another shout out to our government and quasi-government or agency funders. They've been fantastic. Same with my investors, super strategic and patient. My shareholder updates read like horror movies, because I'm transparent with all the things that went wrong and the dumb stuff I did, or the things that cut against us in the terms of the competition or the market. But equally, as soon as I hit send on those shareholder updates, my phone starts ringing, or my email inbox starts filling up with, "Hey, Evan, don't worry about item number 3, I got you covered," or, "Hey, Evan, item number 7 is solved in the following way." That's to the mentorship theme of Intergen, the help, be transparent and be, it's, there's no shame in the reality of the situation. It makes everybody able to come together better if they're doing it on a foundation of the facts.
Fantastic. That was great, Evan and Colin. Everyone was on the edge of their seats, even though I can't see them, most of them, but very thrilling story. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you shortly at our next FinTech Breakfast Club in October. Okay, take care, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and by the way, thank you to
very
all
much.
of our sponsors, the top 7, RBC, Synovus, Sandstone Asset Management, Alberta Innovates, and Prairie Scan. We couldn't do this without them, so thank you for their support.